Hello and welcome. I'm Anand Naidu filling in for Riz Khan. It's been called Africa's World War. The ongoing conflict in the Democratic Republic of Congo is the deadliest since World War II and has killed more than 5 million people. It's also seen the widespread use of rape as a weapon of war. The war, fought mainly between rival militias in eastern Congo, has involved 9 African nations and directly affected the lives of 50 million Congolese, leaving countless people homeless. Worse still, rape has become drastically worse since the January deployment of tens of thousands of poorly trained, poorly paid Congolese soldiers. Visiting U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton says the U.S. is committed to ending rape. She announced a $17 million plan to assist survivors of sexual violence, but there are doubts whether that will alleviate the crisis. On today's show, we ask, what is the solution to the war in the Democratic Republic of Congo? Remember, you can join our conversation with your questions and comments. Log on to livestation.com/AJE, enter the chat room and then take part. We, of course, also welcome your phone calls on this show. Joining me to discuss the issue from Raleigh, North Carolina, Kambale Musavuli, a Congolese activist and the student coordinator and spokesperson for the Friends of Congo. He's written extensively on the subject. From San Francisco, Mwade Mukenge, Regional Director for Sub-Saharan Africa at the Global Fund for Women. She's worked to increase support in the areas of conflict prevention, economic policy, advocacy and empowerment of rural women. She is originally from the Democratic Republic of Congo. And with me in the studio here is Amira Woods, Co-Director of Foreign Policy in Focus at the Institute for Policy Studies. Welcome to all of you to the show.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
Thank you. Mwade Mukenge, let me start with you. When we look at these figures, 200,000 women and girls raped in the last 12 years, 15,000 alone this year. It's staggering figures. How and why has this gone on for so long and with such impunity?
It's extremely staggering, and according to the documentation that we have from women's rights groups on the ground, the number is actually double that. So we're talking about 500,000 women. And this has gone on for so long because Congo is rich in natural resources. And so it has to be understood that this is a resource war. It's a resource war where the riches of the Congo are actually supplying a multitude of companies, meaning a multitude of continents, with the resources needed for electronics and for aviation. And so we have to really examine the supply chains and make sure that they're not causing atrocities. And we are horrified by the fact that 6 million people have lost their lives over the last 12 years. And so we need to look at the root causes. I think it's important that Secretary Clinton made this trip and that she was able to talk to victims of the sexual violence. But we also need to look at the root causes and what kind of pressure the U.S. government can exert on its partners to make sure that we address disarmament, because it's definitely making a difference that weapons are being used to intimidate communities and to intimidate women and ultimately to rape them. And we also have to look at the issue of the responsibility of the corporations in the region. And so we hope the U.S. government would extend its commitment by exerting pressure on these companies.
Amira Woods, when we look at this, in a sense, is it the reemergence of some kind of economic superpower rivalry that is driving this violence in Congo?
Well, there is very much a quest for Africa's resources. It isn't only the Congo, but Africa is now being looked to by much of the world. The United States, China, Russia, India, all have had very high-profile visits to Africa, primarily because of the strategic resources that are now being found on the continent. Let's remember, you know, it's 80% of the world's supply of coltan, without which you cannot make cell phones and computers and Game Boys, right? 80% of the world's supply is found in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Similarly, 80% of the world's supply of cobalt, without which you cannot make the lithium batteries of your hybrid cars. So what is needed as a key resource for the economies now and into the future is now being found in Africa. And so there is almost a scramble going on, a new scramble for Africa, we can call it, because of these vital strategic resources.
And that brings us, to one of the tragedies of this war. Kambale Musavuli, let me put this to you. The Democratic Republic of Congo has been at war in various guises for the last 12 years, even more than 12 years, with Uganda and Rwanda backing rebels trying to overthrow the Congolese president. When and how did rape become a weapon of war that is being used so extensively and so brutally in this region?
The rape has been used since the beginning of the war, and as my colleagues have mentioned already, that this has been a tool that has been used in wars toward the world. When you look at Algeria with the Algerian Revolution, you see that. When you look at Liberia, you see the same thing, as well as in Kosovo. This has been a strategy, definitely, to put fear inside the communities, to intimidate the population, and for a mass displacement. Just remember, where those people live is where the minerals are located. Those are areas rich of minerals. The cheapest way to displace mass population is by instilling fear inside the community by brutal rapes, and those are just the effects of what my colleagues have mentioned as the scramble for Congo's mineral resources, which has been at the root for 125 years. Remember, Leopold II, under his rule, 10 to 15 million people died because of rubber and ivory tusk that was being exploited. Now, under Belgian rule, the uranium that was used for the Hiroshima and Nagasaki came from the Congo through the Belgian colonialism. In the 60s, right after that, with Mobutu in power in the Congo, we saw the support that was given to a dictator backed by the United States for 32 years because he gave unfettered access to the resources of the Congo that was essential, as the Congressional Budget Office says, to the aeronautic and military industry of the United States. Now, with nearly 6 million people dead, it is critical that people understand this is caused simply for the resources that is used in our cell phone, laptop, DVD players, but it will take regular people to end it. And we are looking at Hillary being in Congo right now to assert U.S. policies clearly, where the United States will put pressure on Rwanda and Uganda, those two negative forces inside Congo, support pro-democracy forces inside Congo and local institutions, and the militarization of Central Africa by providing weapons that go to Rwanda and Uganda, it found its way inside of Congo. And with those assertions, we can't see a lasting peace in Congo. $70 million for rape-related issues will provide immediate need, but it's not a last solution to end the conflict in the Congo.
Mwada Bukenge, as you've pointed out, this is a war over resources, and as we've heard Amira Woods tell us, that there are minerals in Congo which are needed by the great economic powers, the United States, China, India, Europe, that are needed from Congo. So when one looks at possible and all solutions to what is happening in Congo right now, do countries like the United States, China, and the countries of Western Europe, have they become really part of the problem rather than the solution?
I think so. I think that by addressing the end result or one of the symptoms of the conflict, which is sexual violence, then we forget to really examine where our minerals come from. And it would really take some concerted effort for all of us to look at our supply chains. And this is where the U.S. can take leadership. And there is an initiative for companies to actually examine and have a code of conduct with regards to where they get their minerals from. It's not enough to say that it's not me that's doing it, that it's 5 layers removed. We need to go all the way down to those bottom layers. And what we are hearing from women is that even if they get support and counseling and surgeries for the extreme atrocities they've gone through, when they go back to their villages, the armed groups are still there. The armed groups are still there, they're still intimidating people, and the guns are still there. So as long as the guns are there, as long as the region continues to be over-militarized, we're going to see this conflict continue. And so we need to see the leadership of the U.S. on demilitarization, on corporate responsibility, as well as supporting the local human rights movements in the Congo, and also support in reforming the judiciary. One of the ways that women can get redress for the atrocities and the violations that they've experienced is to actually count on a legal system that works. And so we need also support with regards to reinforcing the legal system, making sure that women can get the assistance that they need, and that they have the resources to do so, because right now it's a very complicated process and most women cannot get the legal support that they need to actually bring the perpetrators to justice.
Well, we have lots more to talk about, but we are going to take a short break right now. More of our discussion with our guests in a moment. As we pause, let me remind you that you can join the conversation with your questions and comments by logging on to livestation.com and entering the chat room. You can see the debate taking place there right now. We'll be right back. Welcome back. On today's program, we're taking a look at the ongoing war in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Joining me to discuss the issue from Raleigh, North Carolina, Kambale Musavali is a Congolese activist and the student coordinator and spokesperson for the Friends of Congo. Mwadi Mukenge, Regional Director for Sub-Saharan Africa at the Global Fund for Women. She is originally from the Democratic Republic of Congo. And here with me on set, Amira Woods, Co-Director of Foreign Policy in Focus at the Institute for Policy Studies and a frequent commentator on U.S. foreign policy in Africa. Welcome back to all of you. Amira, let me start with you for this part of the program. We received an SMS question from Noor in Canada, who wants to know what steps have been taken to involve the AU, the African Union, in this situation.
Well, I thank Noor for this question. I think it's right on point to say, what are Africans doing in a case as dramatic as the Democratic Republic of the Congo? First, I think the AU has been involved in peace discussions and peace negotiations and also in peacekeeping with support of the UN. So the provision of troops is one. But I think there's a lot more, probably all the guests would agree, a lot more that needs to be done by all the players, the AU, the UN, but in particular all of the global economic players that have such a critical role that they're playing there in the Congo. So the U.S., for example, it is U.S. taxpayer dollars that are helping to provide resources for those mining corporations very active there in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. To what extent can those taxpayers demand greater transparency, greater openness, and more equity in the actions of these corporate players that are very much representing the U.S. in the Congo and elsewhere? But also, I think my colleague Maudi also pointed out a critical issue. Where are the guns coming from? The guns are not being built in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And just as the AU has to increase its critical role in stopping the guns from flowing to the continent, we also have to look to the source. Where are these guns being manufactured? To what extent can we kind of push back on the National Rifle Association in the United States and others who are really promoting the sale of both legal and illegal firearms that are actually fueling these crises?
Okay, I want to get to the weapons issue in just a moment, but we have a caller on the line. This is Hassan calling from Washington, D.C. Hassan, go ahead with your question.
Yes, thank you, sir. My question is if there is any link between what's going on in Congo and what's going on in the Darfur region in Sudan, and is any Sudanese government has any rules or the Darfurian rebels to what's going on in Congo, because I know that's a similar situation, raping women, killing victims. It's the same what's going on in Darfur. So I just want to know your opinion about that issue.
Okay, let me put that question to Mwadi Mukenge.
Actually, I would say that the similarities would be that there is a role of natural resources in both countries, and the inequitable distribution of those resources to the local population. And we also see a similar strategy in terms of the use of rape to humiliate and to control populations. And I think that would be sort of the extent of the connection. But again, I think it just draws the point that many countries on the African continent are over-militarized, and many countries are also facing the reality that their populations are living in destitute poverty. In Congo, for example, there's 80% unemployment. 50% of the young people do not go to school. We don't have a diversified economy, which means that for many young men, they see the mining sector as the only way to make money. And so this makes them naturally go into some of these armed groups, very violent kinds of groups. And so the U.S. government has an opportunity to try to support diversifying the economy and to try to see some of the manufacturing sector take place in the Congo. but a type of manufacturing which would enable the Congolese people to live lives of dignity, and not manufacturing, for example, that is focused on weapons manufacturing.
Well, that brings us full circle to weapons. Kambale, I just want to ask you about weapons. It was an issue that Amira Woods raised as well. There are obviously countries sending and selling weapons to Congo. Who are the main culprits here?
Well, I will speak about the United States mainly, and I will speak about what happened on January 15th this year. AFRICOM sent weapons to Rwanda on January 15th, 5 days before Obama actually took power. And on January 20th, the Rwandan troops entered the Congo. And when we even look at 2007, the Akota program through AFRICOM provided $7 million worth of military aid just to Rwanda in 2008. I do not know the figures. But we see the militarization of Africa happening at an alarming rate. And the solutions to the conflict is actually being made by fly-by experts out of Washington, going for a week in Congo and coming up with this military strategy to dealing with an African issue. But now looking at what's happening with how the weapons end up in the wrong hands, and seeing that the Obama administration right now has chosen the militarization of Congo as a solution by actually doing a military operation, which has caused now close to 1,500, more than 1,500 Congolese dead since December as the U.S. troops got on the ground in Congo. We believe that this is not the solution to the conflict in the Congo. We believe in a political process. The United States should support or establish a political framework that will bring regional actors. We're speaking about Rwanda, Uganda, rebel forces inside Congo, as well as the Congolese government. Bring them to the table, find out what it will take for the rebels to put down their guns and participate in the political process in their country, because in those specific countries I mentioned, Rwanda and Uganda, there is political oppression, and a path to democratization in those countries will be a path to peace inside the Congo. So it's critical. Hillary Clinton went to the Congo. She saw these women. She saw the Congolese people suffering. She understands what's taking place, because under her husband's administration, Bill Clinton, he chose militarization. Under Bush, Bush chose militarization. Now with Obama, that's the same path, but she can break, the United States can break from the policies of the past and support a political process to end the conflict in the Congo.
Amira, how do you see some kind of political solution evolving?
Well, it's the bottom line of letting the Congolese people have the opportunity and the support of the international community to choose their leaders freely, and then to hold those leaders accountable. For far too long, I mean, it goes back to 1960 when Patrice Lumumba was actually assassinated in the Congo, you know, because of outside interests, the U.S. and the U.K. primarily in that instance, wanting to dictate to the Congolese who should be their leaders. And we have had decade after decade of closed political space where it's only the mining interests that end up finding their counterparts, their elites that will do their biddings, supporting those, and not creating really a space for the will of the people to be heard. So the Congolese people have to determine their future, and the international community must play its role in helping to support their efforts to truly control their own destiny.
Mwale Mukenge, I just want to get back to the issue of rape, which has become so endemic in Congo. Why has it been so difficult to bring people to justice? The Congolese president, Joseph Kabila, said he will adopt a policy of zero tolerance. But so far, only 27 people have been convicted. That was last year, and 11 convicted this year.
Unfortunately, there is a culture of impunity which is rampant throughout the country, not just for rape, but for other types of crimes. And definitely there needs to be reinforcement of the judicial sector. And the reason that the rapes continue, the perpetrators know that nothing will happen to them. And they see a lot of other men get away with no kind of redress and no kind of implications for what they've done. And so that kind of fuels further actions. The other thing that happens is that a lot of these rapes happen in public. It's the most atrocious things you can think of, where rapes are happening in a courtyard in the middle of a village, and it's intended to scare the entire population. And when that happens, it instills fear in people. It definitely instills fear in people. But we have to hold the Congolese government accountable as well to make sure that legal systems are restored and they actually work for all the Congolese that are experiencing these kinds of violations. And one of the things that we've been able to do at the Global Fund for Women is to support local women's organizations that are not only helping the victims of violence, but they're also advocating with the government to restore the legal system. They're also, as lawyers, some of them, walking women through the process of filing claims, of seeing justice for their individual cases. But we need to see this happen at a scale which is way beyond the few that have been prosecuted, for example, in just the last month. That is not enough.
Amira, we just have about a minute left. I'm wondering, what do you make of the $17 million that the visiting Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, said will be given to Congo to respond to sexual and gender violence?
I think there are many that are welcoming it, but really it's a drop in the bucket in terms of what's needed. We cannot just look at Band-Aids. We have to look at addressing the root causes of these crises so that a year from now we're not facing hundreds of thousands of other women in a similar predicament.
Okay, that's where we are going to have to leave it. Thank you for joining us, and thanks to Mode Mekenge in San Francisco and Kambale Musavali, who joins us from Raleigh in North Carolina. Thank you very much for joining us. Amira Woods, thank you for joining us.
A pleasure.
And thank you for being with us. On the next Riz Khan show, just when relations between Colombia and Venezuela couldn't get any worse, they've now reached a new low. This time it's over proposed U.S. military bases in the region that President Hugo Chavez says could be used for an incursion against Colombia's neighbors. We'll be discussing that on the next show, and hopefully we'll see you the next time.